building your dream business, only to have everything you've worked for torn apart by betrayal from within. Ethan Carter, the proud owner of Carter Motorcycles, thought he had it all until a dark web of theft, fraud, and deceit was uncovered under his own roof. What happens when the people you trust the most are the ones stealing from you? In a daring undercover mission, Ethan dives into the heart of his dealership's corruption to expose the truth. But the real question is, can he take back what's rightfully his before it's too late? Watch the story unfold as Ethan fights to protect his legacy, his reputation, and his future. Ethan Carter stared into his bathroom mirror, his heart pounding as he barely recognized the stranger glaring back. Where was his perfectly trimmed salt and pepper beard? Gone, replaced by 3 days of scruffy, unkempt stubble that screamed rebellion. His meticulously styled hair, hidden under a faded baseball cap that looked like it had been through a war. And those sharp designer suits he wore like a second skin, swapped for worn jeans and a leather jacket so beat up it whispered stories of forgotten roads. Why this drastic change? Because no one, absolutely no one, would buy a motorcycle enthusiast fresh from a corporate boardroom. This transformation wasn't just a whim, it was a necessity. A bold leap into a world he needed to infiltrate. 3 sleepless nights ago, the idea had struck him like lightning while he pored over quarterly reports, his eyes burning from the glow of his laptop. Carter Motorcycles, his life's work, his pride and joy, was showing troubling signs, subtle dips in customer satisfaction surveys that might seem trivial to others. But Ethan hadn't clawed his way to owning the largest motorcycle dealership in the Pacific Northwest by shrugging off details. Time to see how the other half lives, he muttered, adjusting the fake prescription glasses that sealed his disguise. Oh, the irony. 20 years ago, he'd been a mechanic, hands stained with grease, fueled by nothing but a dream. Now here he was, dressing down to blend in with the very folks he used to be. Could he pull it off? The morning air hit him like a crisp slap as he pulled into the dealership's parking lot. Not in his usual reserved spot, mind you, but in the chaotic customer area. His heart raced, a nervous thrill he hadn't felt in years. He'd rehearsed his cover story 100 times. Mark Thompson, a software developer who'd cashed in some stock options, chasing a midlife crisis with a high-end motorcycle. Simple, believable, close enough to his real self to keep the lie alive. But could he really fool his own team? The familiar glass doors of Carter Motorcycles slid open and everything felt wrong. From this angle, the showroom was a different beast, gleaming under perfectly placed lights, rows of pristine bikes soaking up the morning sun like they were posing for a magazine shoot. The air carried that subtle scent of leather and polish, his idea, a detail he'd insisted on to make the place feel alive. A few early bird customers wandered the displays, their faces flickering with desire and calculation. Were they all hiding secrets too? Welcome to Carter Motorcycles. The cheerful greeting came from Jessica, a newer sales associate whose hiring file Ethan had skimmed but never met face to face. Can I help you find anything specific today? Her smile was warm, disarming. Ethan hesitated, playing his part to perfection. Just looking for now. Been saving up for this for a while, you know, he said, forcing his voice a touch higher. A stranger's tone. Of course. Feel free to look around. Our newest Ducati Panigale V4s just came in. Absolute beauties if you're into sport bike. Tika's enthusiasm was infectious, her knowledge razor sharp. She didn't hover, but her attentive presence lingered just right. Was she too good to be true? For the next hour, Ethan dove headfirst into the customer experience, his senses on high alert. He peppered salespeople with detailed questions about different models, cataloging their responses in his mind. Some, like Jessica, radiated genuine passion, their love for the bikes shining through. Others, they seemed more focused on sealing a quick deal, their smiles a little too slick. He jotted mental notes for future training sessions. Oh, he'd have a lot to say. The real test came when he zeroed in on a limited edition BMW S1000RR, one of the priciest models in the place. Mind if I sit on, he asked, pulling out a worn wallet with a deliberate flourish, the leather frayed at the edges. Derek, the sales manager, appeared like he'd been summoned by magic. Of course, sir. Let me grab the keys to release the security chain. Ethan caught the flicker in Derek's eyes, a fleeting frown as they scanned his tattered jacket. What was that about? Straddling the bike, Ethan felt a rush of familiarity. This was a model he'd helped design special modifications for. He launched into the haggling dance, watching Derek's every move, noting the slick persuasion laced with occasional pressure tactics. Look, Derek leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I shouldn't do this, but I might be able to work something out on the price. The owner's a real numbers guy. Ethan bit back a laugh. Numbers guy, that's what they thought of him. But I've got some flexibility. What's your budget looking like? The negotiation was a masterclass, even if Derek's methods towed the line of the dealership's policy. Ethan was impressed, but a nagging question lingered. How far would Derek go? He was about to push harder to see how Derek handled a tough customer, when a hushed conversation behind him stopped him cold. Two customers had drifted closer, their voices barely a murmur. Normally, their words would have drowned in the showroom's hum, but Ethan's heightened senses, sharpened by the adrenaline of his undercover mission, caught every syllable. They say you can get any bike you want for half the price if you know the right guy. Yeah, but it's gotta be off the books. No paperwork, no tracking. Ethan's hands clamped onto the BMW's handlebars, his knuckles whitening under his grimy nails. 20 years of building a reputation for fair deals, for integrity, and now a shadow operation right under his nose. His blood ran cold. How could this be happening? He forced himself to stay calm, fiddling with the bike's mirrors while straining to catch more. Derek droned on about financing, but Ethan's mind was elsewhere, racing through possibilities, piecing together tiny inventory discrepancies he'd dismissed as glitches. I'll need to think about it, he said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside. Mind if I walk around a bit more? This is a big investment, you know. Of course, sir, take your time. Derek handed him a business card, all smiles. I'm here all day if you have questions. Ethan nodded, sliding off the BMW, his legs heavy as he avoided looking directly at the two customers who'd just shattered his world. But his peripheral vision missed nothing. Their casual stances, their calculated nonchalance, the way they seemed to be waiting for what or who. The showroom, once his pride, now felt like a facade, its gleaming surfaces hiding dark secrets he'd never suspected. Someone was betraying everything he'd built, everything, and he was going to find out. His heart hammered against his ribs as he wandered between the rows of motorcycles, keeping up his casual act while his mind spun. The two customers had drifted to the vintage collection, their reflections dancing in the polished chrome of a restored Harley-Davidson. One sported a leather vest over a white t-shirt, his arms a canvas of faded tattoos. The other, younger, was dressed way too flashy for someone supposedly into shady deals. Designer jeans, limited edition sneakers, and a watch that could probably buy one of their entry-level bikes outright. Who were these guys? Man, these prices are insane, the flashy one said loudly, then lowered his voice. Good thing we know better, right? Ethan pretended to study a Triumph Bonneville, angling himself to eavesdrop while feigning fascination with the bike's curve. His years in the industry had honed his instincts, and these two were screaming trouble. Tattoo Arms nodded, pulling out his phone. Got the contact right here. Guy named Ray's been hooking people up for months. Never had a complaint. Ray? Ray Martinez, Ethan's warehouse manager of 3 years. The same Ray who'd pushed for that new inventory system 6 months ago, who always volunteered for late-night counts. The name hit like a punch to the gut. How could Ray do this? How's it work? The flashy one asked, flipping through a glossy catalog with fake boredom. Simple. You pick what you want. Ray marks it as damaged in the system. Bike disappears during transport to the repair facility. Tattoo Arms made air quotes. And shows up wherever you want it. Half price, cash only. Ethan's fingers tightened around the Bonneville's handlebar, his mind reeling. The missing inventory reports, the spike in damaged units, the transport log discrepancies. It all snapped into place with a sickening clarity. A betrayal this right in his own dealership. Sounds too good to be true, the flashy one said, playing it cool. What's stopping the owner from figuring it out? Tattoo Arms laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Carter's too busy counting his millions to notice what's happening under his nose. Besides, Ray's got it all covered in the computer system, swaps serial numbers with junked bikes, makes everything look legit on paper. The words stung more than Ethan cared to admit. Was that really how his team saw him? A detached millionaire blind to the rot in his own empire. When can we meet him? The flashy one whispered. Tonight behind the service lot at 11. Bring cash, 40 grand for that Ducati you were eyeing. No paperwork, no questions. Ethan's mind flashed to the new Ducati Panigale V4. Fresh in last week. Retailing at 40 grand. The math of betrayal hit hard. Not just the stolen bikes, but the insurance fallout, the legal risks, the potential ruin of his reputation if this leaked. How could he let this happen? Hey, you need any help there? Jessica's cheerful voice nearly made him jump out of his skin. She'd crept up while he was lost in the conversation, just admiring the classic lines. Ethan managed forcing a smile that felt like a grimace. These older models really tell a story, don't they? They sure do. Jessica launched into a detailed history of the Bonneville line, her enthusiasm giving Ethan a perfect excuse to linger. The two customers were heading for the exit now, but not before Tattoo Arms grabbed Eric's business card with a theatrical flirt. We'll definitely be back to test ride some bikes, he called out. Gotta shop around, you know. Ethan watched them slip through the gleaming glass doors, his reflection in the glass looking like a ghost among the bikes. The pride he'd felt in his dealership just hours ago, it was gone, replaced by a gnawing darkness. His sanctuary, his legacy, had been twisted into a front for criminals who saw his life's work as nothing but a cash grab. How could he have been so blind? A new customer walked in, and Jessica excused herself to help. Ethan barely registered. His mind was already racing, plotting his next steps. He needed proof, ironclad evidence that would hold up in court. But more than that, he needed to know the full scope of this betrayal. How many bikes had been stolen? Who else was involved? Was Ray the mastermind or just a pawn in a bigger game? The showroom's upbeat music mocked him, its cheery rhythm clashing with the weight of his discovery. He glanced at his watch, 2:30 p.m. 8.5 hours until the meeting behind the service lot. 8.5 hours to decide his next move. His fingers twitched, itching to call the police and shut this down now, but the investigator in him, the same stubborn instinct that had driven him to go undercover, screamed for caution. Rush this and he could miss the bigger picture. What was the bigger picture? He made his way to the exit, playing the undecided customer to the hilt. Thanks for all the help, he called to Jessica, his voice steadier than he felt. I'll need to sleep on it. As the doors slid shut behind him, the weight of his discovery pressed down like a physical force. The motorcycles in the window display gleamed in the afternoon sun, their flawless surfaces hiding the ugliness beneath. Tonight he'd start unraveling this mess, no matter where it led. But first, he had work to do, preparations to make, a fight to win. Could he take back his dealership, his legacy, before it was too late? The local coffee shop just 2 blocks from his dealership became Ethan Carter's makeshift war room, a sanctuary where he could unravel the betrayal threatening to destroy everything he'd built. Settling into a dim corner booth, his laptop humming to life, he logged into the dealership system remotely, a feature of all people Ray had pushed for. Oh, the bitter irony. It stung like a slap. Can I get you anything else? The barista asked, her eyes lingering on his untouched Americano now cold and forgotten. I'm good, thanks, Ethan muttered, barely glancing up, his focus glued to the screen. The past 6 months of inventory records sprawled before him, each line a potential clue to the scope of Ray's treachery. How deep did this go? At first, everything looked normal, too normal, almost staged. But Ethan hadn't built a business empire by swallowing surface-level lies. He dove in, cross-referencing serial numbers of damaged bikes with their original shipping manifests, his fingers flying over the keyboard. A pattern emerged, subtle but chilling, like a snake slithering into view. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, without fail, a high-end bike was marked as damaged. The paperwork for the repair facility, perfect, too perfect. The same cookie-cutter forms, identical diagnostic codes, matching repair cost estimates. It was all wrong. Real mechanics scribbled messy notes, used their own shorthand, described issues in gritty detail. These were fakes, probably churned out from a template. How could he have missed this? Clever, Ethan whispered, his voice tight with fury as he took a sip of the ice-cold coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. But not clever enough. A new window flashed on his screen, the employee scheduling system. His heart sank further. Ray had been tweaking the warehouse shifts for months, oh so slyly ensuring he was alone during those critical night hours. The changes were so gradual, scattered across departments, that no one had noticed. No one. Ethan's phone buzzed, jolting him a text from Michael, his security chief, asking why he hadn't shown up today. For a fleeting moment, Ethan considered spilling everything. Michael had been with him for 15 years. His loyalty as solid as steel, or so he'd thought about Ray just hours ago. Sorry, feeling under the weather, he texted back. The lie tasting like ash. Taking a personal day, he couldn't risk it, not yet. Who could he trust? He pulled up Ray's personnel file next, his gut churning. The background check was pristine, too pristine, like a polished facade hiding rot. Previous jobs at 3 other dealerships, each lasting exactly 2 years. No criminal record, glowing references. But something gnawed at Ethan's instincts. A whisper of a quick search online revealed the truth, and it hit like a sledgehammer. The first dealership Ray worked for went bankrupt right after he left. The second, torched in a mysterious warehouse fire. The third, shuttered after an insurance probe. None directly tied to Ray, but the pattern, undeniable. You've done this before. Ethan realized, his fingers racing across the keyboard as he dug deeper, his pulse pounding. Ray wasn't just a crooked employee, he was a pro, a ghost slipping from dealership to dealership, spinning sophisticated theft webs and vanishing before the trap snapped shut. How had he been so blind? The pieces were clicking into place now, each one tightening the knot in Ethan's chest. A flicker of movement outside the coffee shop window snapped him out of his thoughts. A familiar figure, Jessica, was strolling past, heading home for the day. She paused to check her phone, but it was her stance that set Ethan's alarms blaring. The quick glances over her shoulder, the nervous energy radiating off her. Was she part of this too? His fingers darted to the payroll record. Jessica had been hired 3 months ago, right after Ray pushed for an extra sales position. Her references, flawless, just like Ray's too flawless. No, Ethan breathed, his chest constricting as if squeezed by a vice. It can't be, but the evidence was glaring. Jessica's past employers mirrored Ray's pattern, just staggered by a few months. She wasn't just a sales associate. She was in on it, likely handling the customer side while Ray pulled strings in the warehouse. The betrayal cut like a knife. He'd watched her charm customers earlier, admired her enthusiasm, her knack for the job. Was it all a lie? How many others were involved? His cursor hovered over the security alert button, a single click away from locking down the entire system, freezing transactions, and calling the cop. One move could end this now, but years of hard-earned instinct screamed at him to wait. Ray and Jessica were slick, but they couldn't be pulling this off alone. Someone was forging transport documents, laundering the cash, coordinating with buyers. Who else was in on? The coffee shop was quieting now, the afternoon crowd trickling out. Through the window, Ethan glimpsed his dealership in the distance, its glass walls catching the setting sun's glow. Once a symbol of his pride, it now loomed like a fortress of secrets, its shadows hiding traitor. How had it come to this? His phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from an unknown number. Meeting confirmed for tonight, 11:00 p.m. Bring the cash. Ethan's breath caught. It wasn't meant for him. They must have grabbed his number from the customer info card he'd filled out earlier. His hands clenched into fists, nails biting into his palms. They were so cocky, so sure of their scheme, they weren't even bothering to cover their tracks. Tonight's meeting wasn't just about one stolen bike. It was his shot to blow the lid off this whole operation. But first, he needed to know exactly what he was walking into. Ray and Jessica were just the tip of the iceberg. Somewhere in his dealership, lurking in plain sight, were the other conspirators, and he had only hours to figure out who they were before stepping into what could be a deadly trap. Could he outsmart them? The sun had long vanished when Ethan parked his nondescript rental car 3 blocks from the dealership, his heart thudding like a drum. The neon sign, casting its eerie blue glow against the night sky, no longer felt like a badge of success. It was a beacon for criminal. He checked his gear one last time. Phone fully charged, a small video camera primed, a voice recorder humming in his breast pocket. Just like old times, he muttered, a wry smile flickering as he recalled his early days, wrench in hand, fixing bikes late into the night in his garage. But this wasn't about machines. It was about mending the shattered trust in his business. Could he do it? 10:15 p.m. The service lot was cloaked in darkness.
save for the stark security lights throwing long, jagged shadows across the pavement. From his hidden vantage point, Ethan spotted a lone car in the employee parking area, Ray's black Honda Civic, a silent accomplice. The warehouse's side door creaked open, yellow light spilling onto the asphalt. Ray stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, his gestures wild. Ethan raised his camera, zooming in, his breath shallow. Even from this distance, Ray's tension was palpable, not the cool strut of a master thief, but the jittery panic of a man under fire. Something was wrong. What had spooked him? A second figure emerged from the shadows. Dressed in stark black, her usual bubbly charm was gone, replaced by a cold, steely expression that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. The two locked into what looked like a heated argument, their voices too low to carry. "Come on," Ethan hissed, tweaking the camera's focus. "Show me what you're hiding." 10:45 p.m. A white van rolled into the lot, headlights off, creeping like a predator. It circled to the loading dock, backing up to the massive roll-up door, the engine idling ominously. Two more figures slipped from the warehouse, pushing a motorcycle draped in moving blankets. Ethan's breath hitched. Even under the cover, he recognized the sleek silhouette of the Ducati Panigale. His fingers tightened on the camera, documenting every detail: faces, license plates, timestamps. This was it.
But something felt off. Ray's nervous energy, the extra hands, the hurried movements. This wasn't their usual slick routine. They were scared, and scared criminals slipped up. 11:00 p.m. Right on cue, a black SUV prowled into the lot. The buyers, the flashy watch guy from earlier, stepped out with two new faces, their movements sharp, military precise, scanning the lot like seasoned pros. Ethan's stomach dropped. This isn't just one bike, he realized, horror creeping in. They're moving the whole operation tonight. His fears were confirmed as a second van appeared. Then a third, the loading dock erupting into a frenzy as more bikes were wheeled out. Each one was worth tens of thousands, but worse, each one was a stab in the heart of everything his dealership stood for. His finger hovered over the emergency contact on his phone, a direct line to the police sergeant he'd briefed earlier. One call, and squad cars would swarm the lot. But something held him back, a nagging instinct shouting he was missing a piece of the puzzle. What was it? 11:50, a familiar SUV rolled in. Michael's. Ethan's heart plummeted as his security chief stepped out, striding straight to Ray with a chummy handshake. The final betrayal slammed into place. Michael hadn't missed the security breaches he'd enabled then. It all made sense now. Michael's access to the systems, Ray's inventory control, Jessica's customer connections, a perfect triangle of deceit. How could Michael do this? But why the rush tonight? The answer slunk out of the shadows, and Ethan nearly dropped his camera. Derek, his sales manager, approached with a stack of papers. Ethan recognized them instantly. The new digital inventory system contracts he was set to sign tomorrow. The ones that would have made their scheme impossible. They weren't just stealing, they were fleeing, grabbing every bike they could before vanishing. Ethan's hand twitched toward his phone, but before he could dial, headlights slashed across the lot. More vehicles, but these moved differently. Aggressively. Police. A megaphone blared. This is a raid. Everyone freeze. Chaos exploded. People bolted. Tires screeched, and in the madness, Ethan saw Ray sprinting for the back fence, a duffel bag swinging wildly. Without thinking, Ethan gunned his rental car's engine, swinging around to cut off Ray's escape. The look of shock on Ray's face as Ethan stepped out was almost worth the pain. Almost going somewhere? Ethan asked, his voice icy calm over the wail of sirens. Ray's face twisted with rage, the duffel bag hitting the ground, spilling stacks of cash that glinted under the security lights. "You," Ray spat. Should have known the great Ethan Carter couldn't resist playing detective. Actually, Ethan stepped closer, blocking Ray's path. "I was just checking on customer satisfaction." Imagine my shock finding such unhappy employee. Blue and red lights flashed, painting the lot as police swarmed. In the distance, Jessica and Michael were cuffed, while Derek babbled to a stern detective. "You don't get it," Ray hissed, his voice low and venomous. "This is bigger than your little dealership. We're tied to the Golden Chain Gang, Ethan cut him off, savoring the flicker of panic in Ray's eyes. "Oh, I did my homework after our coffee shop session. Your old employers, all fronts for laundering money through bike sales." The truth was out, and Ethan was ready to end this whatever it took. Ray's hand twitched toward his jacket, but Ethan was lightning fast. In one smooth, practiced motion, he swept Ray's legs out from under him. A slick move straight from his college wrestling day. Ray hit the pavement with a thud that echoed Ethan's resolve, and 2 officers swooped in to cuff him before he could blink. "Mr. Carter." A tall woman in a crisp dark suit strode forward, flashing an FBI badge that glinted under the flashing lights. "I'm Special Agent Ch. We've been chasing this operation for months, and your cooperation tonight? It's cracked a case spanning 3 states." Ethan's heart raced. 3 states. This was bigger than he'd ever imagined. He watched, jaw tight, as agents swarmed the lot like ants, snapping photos, securing vehicles, and cataloging evidence. "Months?" he asked, his voice sharp with disbelief. "You knew about the money laundering all along?" Agent Chen's face turned grim, her eyes hard. "Yes, the Golden Chain Gang has been using motorcycle dealerships as fronts for years. They send in teams like Ray's to set up shop, then use stolen bikes to smuggle cash across state lines. What we didn't know was their next target until you tipped off the police today." Ethan's mind reeled. His dealership, his life's work, had been a pawn in a criminal chess game. How had he not seen it? A commotion near the warehouse yanked their attention. Michael, his security chief, was thrashing against the officers, his voice a desperate roar. "Carter set us up. He knew everything. He's been skimming from day one." Ethan's blood boiled. "How dare he?" "That's interesting," Agent Chen said, her eyebrow arching like a drawn bow. "Because we've got 6 months of surveillance proving Mr. Carter had 0 involvement. Care to explain how he was supposedly running your scheme while building a case against it?" Michael's face crumpled, his accusations dissolving in the face of cold, hard evidence. Ethan felt a flicker of satisfaction, but the sting of betrayal still burned. 15 years of loyalty gone. But it was Derek's reaction that stopped Ethan cold. The sales manager stood frozen, his face ashen, staring at his phone like it was a ticking bomb. "Agent Chen," Ethan called, nodding toward Derek, his voice low but urgent. "I think your evidence list is about to get longer." Chen signaled her team, and in seconds, they'd snatched Derek's phone. The man collapsed like a house of cards. "The account numbers," he stammered, his voice trembling. "It's all there. The whole network." Ray said if I got caught I could use it as leverage. Ethan stepped closer, his gaze hard as steel. "Let me guess," he said, his words cutting. "Ray convinced you I was the mastermind, that he was just following my orders, right?" Derek's miserable nod confirmed it all. The scheme unfolded in Ethan's mind like a twisted plot. Ray's team hadn't just been stealing bikes. They'd been weaving a web of forged documents and fake transactions to frame him if they ever got caught. A failsafe to pin it all on the boss. How diabolical was that? Agent Chen's voice cut through his thoughts. "It's their playbook," she explained, her tone heavy. "The gang builds a paper trail to implicate the dealership owner. If the operation's exposed, they threaten to leak evidence painting the owner as the kingpin. Most owners take a plea deal to avoid a longer sentence." Ethan's fists clenched. "Those cowards." "But they didn't count on the owner going undercover," he added, a grim smile tugging at his lips, as the brilliance of his disguise sank in. They'd been so focused on dodging official investigations, they never dreamed he'd play detective himself. His gamble had paid off. Jessica was the last to be led past, her cheerful sales mask shattered, replaced by a cold, defiant sneer that chilled Ethan to the core. She paused, her eyes locking onto his. "You know what's funny?" she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "If you hadn't been so obsessed with customer satisfaction, we'd have been gone tomorrow. New identities, new targets, poof, gone." Ethan's stomach twisted. "So close." "That's not funny," he shot back, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. "That's just sad." Her words lingered like a bad dream. She'd played him, and he'd almost let her slip away. As the final police car peeled out, its sirens fading into the night, Ethan stood alone in the empty service lot, the weight of the night pressing down on him. Agent Chen approached, a thick file in hand. "We'll need your help documenting everything they stole," she said, her tone professional but kind.
And heads up, the gang might try to retaliate. We can offer protection. No, Ethan cut her off, a spark igniting in his mind. I've got a better plan, one that'll make sure no one dares target us again. He yanked out his phone, scrolling to his PR team's number with a fierce determination. It was time to flip the script. By morning, every news outlet in the Pacific Northwest would be screaming about how Carter Motorcycles helped the FBI bust a major crime ring. His dealership would be untouchable, too high profile, too risky for any gang to touch. Who'd dare mess with that? Mr. Carter, Agent Chen called as she headed to her car, her voice tinged with curiosity. Just one thing. Why go undercover yourself? Why not hire investigators? Ethan glanced up at the dealership's neon sign, still glowing defiantly despite the chaos that had unfolded beneath it. Because sometimes, he said, his voice soft but resolute, the only way to protect what you've built is to remember how you built it. Those early days, grease-stained hands, late nights, pure grit, had forged him. He'd never forget that. 3 months later, Carter Motorcycles buzzed with a vibrant, unstoppable energy. The morning sun poured through sleek, smart tint windows, part of a massive security overhaul that made the dealership a fortress without losing its warm, inviting vibe. Ethan stood in the heart of his showroom, watching a young couple fawn over a Triumph Street triple. The woman straddled the bike, beaming, while her partner snapped photos, their laughter filling the air. This was what his dealership was all about: genuine passion, honest deals, and the raw joy of motorcycling. How could anything be better? Mr. Carter, a familiar voice called, snapping him from his thought. He turned to see Linda, his new head of security, striding toward him with a tablet, her eyes bright with excitement. After the bust, the former FBI agent had shocked everyone by joining his team, trading her badge for a chance to revolutionize dealership security from the inside. The quarterly audit results are in, she said, handing him the tablet with a sly smile. You're gonna love this. Ethan scrolled through the report, his heart swelling with pride. Every bike accounted for, every transaction crystal clear, every protocol followed to a T. But the real kicker, customer satisfaction scores had soared to an all-time high. We did it, he murmured, barely believing it. The tracker program's a game changer, Linda said, leading him toward the revamped warehouse. Every high-end model's got a hidden GPS unit now. Good luck finding it unless you know where to look. And the blockchain verification system. Forging ownership records is impossible. They passed the service department, now a high-tech marvel that looked more like a lab than a garage. Tools were digitally tracked, repairs recorded on video, parts verified through a secure supply chain. But here's the cherry on top. Linda grinned, her enthusiasm contagious. Remember those copycats who tried the same scam at Pacific Motors last week? They crashed and burned, thanks to the inter-dealership alert system you helped build. Ethan chuckled, the memory of the news report sparking a warm glow. Those thieves walked right into a trap. Who'd try that again? The warehouse doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing rows of motorcycles locked down with cutting-edge security. But what caught Ethan's eye was the group huddled near the training area. New employees, their faces a mix of nerves and excitement, soaking up their orientation. These weren't just hires. They were part of his redemption program. Morning everyone, he called, veering toward them with a grin. The group turned, their eyes wide. As you've probably heard, he said, his voice warm but firm, this dealership's got a wild history. 3 months ago we uncovered a criminal ring right here in this warehouse. But we didn't let it break us. We learned from it. He gestured to the transparent walls, the high-tech locks, the open layout. Everything here is built to protect our inventory and our customers' trust. But the real security, it's you. The weight of his words hit home, and the new hires stood taller, their purpose clear. Could they feel the hope in the air? Each of them had been hand-picked from a program giving second chances to folks with minor legal slip-ups, eager to turn their lives around. Mr. Carter, one raised his hand. Jake, a former street racer who'd done 6 months for illegal races. I just want to say thank you for trusting us. Ethan's smile softened, memories of his own past mistakes flashing through his mind. Trust is earned, he replied, but everyone deserves a shot to earn it. Right on cue, a motorcycle engine roared through the warehouse, a customer test riding a new model, the sound pure, unfiltered joy. It was why Ethan fell in love with bikes in the first place. Linda, he said, turning to his security chief with a spark in his eye, Let's move up the timeline on Project Renaissance. Her eyes widened. The community outreach program, but we plan to launch next month. Life's too short to wait on great ideas. Ethan shot back, already drafting an email to his team. The program was his passion, a bold mix of free safety courses, mentorship for at-risk youth, and partnerships with local cops to promote responsible riding. The young couple from the showroom strolled by, now proud owners of the Triumph, their faces glowing with that special thrill of joining the motorcycling world. This was Carter Motorcycles' heart, not just selling bikes, but forging bonds, building trust, sharing the ride. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the warehouse, Ethan took a final walk through his dealership. Every corner held a story, some raw, some triumphant, all shaping a stronger future. The betrayal had nearly gutted everything, but facing it head-on had birthed something better. Ready for the staff meeting? Linda asked, glancing at her watch. Ethan nodded, a deep satisfaction settling in. His dealership wasn't just safe, it was thriving, evolving, alive. The shadows were gone, replaced by transparency, the doubt by trust, the fear by hope. You know, he said as they headed to the conference room where his team waited to plan their next chapter. Sometimes the worst storms clear the way for the brightest sky. Looking at the proud faces of his employees, new and veteran, all united in doing right, Ethan knew Carter Motorcycles wasn't just back on track. It was carving a bold new path, one that would inspire a future where trust, integrity, and second chances weren't just ideals, but the bedrock of something truly extraordinary. Could anything stop them now?